Okay, calling to order Tuesday, June 7th, 2022, Instructional Subcommittee to order. Deb, roll call.
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Ms. Flaherty?
Here.
Ms. Pereira?
Here.
Salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. All right. First discussion. What is it? Oh, citizens input. Is there any citizens input, Deb?
There is
No citizens input at this time. Thank you. First discussion, number 3, discussion and vote to refer the SEL curriculum.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to start.
Claudia Costa will report.
Yes, so you all should have a presentation as well too that we shared with everyone. So I apologize, that wasn't sent earlier, this presentation, in addition to the one that you have, but we wanted to make sure you had it to follow along with us. So we started back in November. Our SEL team, we had written in a mental health, we put in for the SEL mental health grant. One of the things we were really looking at is our SEL curriculum and Choose Love as it from the district, and looking at how it was working, and we really looked at our conduct data, speaking to our principals and school counselors as well too, just for some input into what our current SEL curriculum, and then so we were really looking at curriculum that would had a focus on really conflict resolution, increasing pro-social behaviors as well too, really looking at what did this school year look like for us when we saw an uptick on conflict amongst our students, in particular the middle school and high school level, and just really lacking some of those social skills, needing to be retaught quite a bit. So we're looking at curriculum that would do a lot of that, but really appropriate for that secondary level. So we researched the Castle website and really looking at where's their curriculum that will touch upon those topics that we really wanted to focus on, in particular in an urban district that focus on teaching kids how do you resolve conflict, or how do you negotiate frustrations and emotions, and really create leadership out of our students.
Yeah, so again, in our review with Choose Love, which we initially brought on board for our K-12 curriculum, it's one of the only K-12 curriculum that we thought was very important to unify the district. But also looking at the needs coming back from COVID, as Claudia said, we really wanted to look at something that explicitly taught some skills, especially within conflict resolution. And when we did our review early on, we found that Choose Love on its own maybe did not do the best job to give the skills that we felt that they needed. So this year we kind of put some curriculum together by doing some research on our own, and doing some additional advisory lessons on some of the social skills, some of the conflict resolution and engagement skills. But looking forward to next year, we're looking at a full secondary SEL curriculum. And some of the things that we were really looking for, because on Castle's website they have a lot of different curriculums. Some are evidence-based, some are going through the process, but we really wanted something that was evidence-based both for middle and high school, because we still felt it was important to have that kind of like through line, a similar curriculum as students are going, for example, from 7th to 8th to 9th to 10th, because that's really where we found, looking at our data, a lot of the conflict, a lot of the peer conflict was happening in our schools, and those grades 7, 8, 9, 10, kind of that age range. We also wanted to make sure that something was culturally relevant and meaningful for all of our students. And then in addition to just the curriculum itself, when we were looking at pieces, we wanted to have kind of a comprehensive training or coaching model, since we're looking to use this as a tier 1 kind of advisory curriculum, meaning that teachers would be delivering the content too. So we wanted to make sure kind of like that definitely our school counselors and our SACs and our administrators are training, but also they have the ability to train the teachers, and the teachers get some coaching too when they're delivering some of the lessons through advisory. So one of the key things we looked at, Castle ranks programs in 3 ways: promising, SEL support, and SEL select is the highest. So we wanted to look at programs that were SEL select, because those were ones that have been proven over research-based studies to have impact and have increased efficacy. So you can see in order for a curriculum to be rated select by Castle, there has to be improved positive social behavior, reduced problem behavior, reduced emotion distress, improved school connectedness, improved school climate. Those are some of the things that Castle is looking at. The other piece I think that we were looking at is, would a curriculum just be standalone and advisory, or were there some opportunities to integrate into the curriculum, whether that be social studies, English, so that kind of marrying of academic and SEL skills together. So ideally, when we did our review, we wanted to look at curriculums that did both. So we looked at a couple different curriculums, and one curriculum really stood out, and that's the one that you have before you, the leadership program, violence prevention program. One of the things that we found when we were doing our review is that most of the curriculums were either research-based K-8, K-6, so only grade 6, and there was very few curriculums that were evidence-based or research-based at the both middle and high school level. So one of the things we liked about the leadership program and the violence prevention program was that not only was it developmentally appropriate for middle and high, not only did they have a curriculum for grades 6 to 12, but through various research-based studies, it improved evidence-based in grades 6 through 10 for improved outcomes. They also have a comprehensive training and coaching available with their program, both in person and virtual. The program is culturally relevant, and it's really it's based around leadership skills, so it frames everything in like developing skills versus deficit, which we liked. And it also not only has the standalone lessons, but opportunities for extensions and outreach and collaborations with different subjects. So our findings, there was one program really above and beyond the rest. So the VPP program, you can see on the next slide. It does have it does show the improved ability to manage conflicts, find resolutions, build resilience, including bullying and violence, improve conflict resolution skills, improve peer support behavior, improve school community behavior, and so on. And those were a lot of the key pieces that we are looking at from our data that we needed to support students, especially during the return to COVID.
Is this new?
The VPP. It's been around for about 20 years. It's been in New York City, a lot of southern states.
And how long do we have Choose Love?
Choose Love, we've had it for 4 years, I believe.
Correct.
Just started right before.
Yeah.
And are we getting rid of Choose Love?
No, so we're still gonna continue, because a lot of our school counselors, they've worked a lot to really create lessons around Choose Love and the 4 pillars. We love those 4 pillars, and it's something that we've been using quite a bit. We still can use those lessons that we've had, but there weren't many lessons. I think each grade level, there was like 7 lessons per pillar, which wasn't enough, so we needed something that was really gonna add a lot more substance. So schools could still use some of the Choose Love curriculum that's there, in addition to this here. So
We
they
don't
don't
pay for
have
that
to get rid
anymore.
of it.
Yeah.
Choose Love is a free curriculum.
That's one
Yeah.
thing, it's just a
Right.
resource.
Yeah. And then we'll going into stakeholder engagement.
Alright. So what we had done was we had introduced the program, everything we had from the program. First, the SEL team met with the personnel from the leadership just to hear a little bit more about them, hear more of what they had to offer, their language capacity, and all of that. So we liked what we had to, what they presented. We then in April, we presented all the information to our school counselors, school adjustment counselors, and our guidance department as well too, as well as the principals at the secondary level to ask for some feedback from them. So the feedback we received was pretty good. I mean, we didn't receive anything negative at all. They
Yeah.
really liked what they had, what they've seen.
Question.
Yes,
Sorry, was the feedback in person? Was it done,
both.
response, email? It was,
Both. So
Okay.
I had met with the high school, school adjustment counselors, and I had shared with them everything that I had and asked for their feedback during our check-in meeting, so that was in person, in addition to some emails as well too. And then after what we had done, we were gonna meet with the leadership team for the second time. I invited everyone in the middle school level who wanted to be part of this meeting with them. So we had one representative from the middle school and from the high school, from my department and from Drew's department, who sat in to be part of our meeting with the leadership team as well, to just really to ask some more questions and to gather their input after that meeting as well too.
Yeah, so I mean, the feedback that we got both in person and also we asked also via email to a wider audience.
mostly positive.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
almost all, it was positive. They really liked I think the focus on some of the conflict resolution skills. And the way, as you can see in some of the manuals, it kind of briefly overviews the different topics. I think was really relevant to what was going on in the schools this year. That was the feedback that we got.
So I can go on with our presentation with the core values is empowering students to succeed, and it begins with shifting away from the way they feel about themselves. Students who are isolated in their schools and communities, they lack the motivation to achieve in the classroom. So we really liked everything that it stood for within their core values and really empowering students to be leaders in many ways. So they have the middle school, the violence prevention program curriculum, where their components are into introduction to the leadership, affirmation, cooperation, the vision and imagination, and conflict management. And then there's a project for all, at the end of the middle school and the high school, there's a work project that comes out of all of this, which I'm so excited when I was reading about it and to potentially see it as well too. And when we look at the high school curriculum, what they're looking at is introduction to the leadership, self-concept, group dynamics, the vision and imagination, and conflict management and social responsibility. So we really like that as well too. Within that leadership program, there's another curriculum as well too, which is an Upstanders Curriculum. That curriculum is a bullying curriculum. We were looking to purchase that one as well for our middle and high school, which it's about empowering upstanders. It's a curriculum that seeks to prevent bullying by focusing on the role of witnesses to bullying. And that curriculum contains the 3 components in 15 lessons, which is the introduction lessons, upstanders, skill building lessons, and then upstander campaign lessons, which is all to tackle bullying.
Which one is that, Claudia?
The upstanders,
Call it empowering.
empowering upstanders. It
This is
should
the
be-
other component.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
it should be, I printed out the packet in there for you, which is this blue one here.
That's right, because I didn't see this. All right, that's why I'm a little.
And if you look at the back of it, it gives you the description of what their curriculum looks like. So this program, the delivery content style is built to resonate with racially, ethnically, culturally, religiously, and ability diverse students, which we like that as well too. The strategies for working with bias and youth action projects and opportunities are designed to support students' understanding of their role as active and contributing productive members of the community. So that's-
Anybody have questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
We have the rollout.
Yeah, so just a little bit about the draft potential rollout of what a new curriculum would look like. knowing that a lot of planning has to go out into an initiative that to go well for 7 schools, grades 6 through 12. So what we'd really want to do is spend some time in June and July meeting with the VPP, with our leadership team, as well as some school-based representatives, and really talk about the rollout. What are our key initiatives, goals, objectives? How are the trainings going to go? When do we need coaching, etc. Both for the VPP and the Upstanders Curriculum, and also how they fit together. So almost like helping us develop a scope and sequence for what year 1 would look like. Then in August, they would come on site during the Admin Institute, and all of the counselors and VPs and administrators would be trained so that they would be knowledgeable and could help at the school level train the teachers as well. We'd also want to invite or have, if there's any teacher leaders who want to be part of the school-based implementation team, we'd want to have them trained as well, so they could serve as resources for their colleagues at their school too. Then in August, when we're back, and at the beginning of September, we would train and kind of roll out the curriculum so teachers understood the curriculum, felt comfortable with the curriculum, and then we would begin the curriculum probably in later September or early October. The curriculum would be sequenced out until June. We'd also have some points during either our PD days or other days during the school year, kind of mid-year checkpoints, where VPP would talk with schools and the district about the rollout. If there's any course correction that needed, any additional resources that we need to really make an impactful kind of first year kind of rollout. They would help us work on that plan for the entire year as well. So that would be kind of like the draft rollout plan for year 1. And then on the last side, you see the projected cost for year 1, all of the curriculum and materials, include not only like a digital copy, but a teacher manual and also student booklets, which we like because it cuts down on some of the prep work that it might take a teacher or someone else organizing materials. It all comes kind of as one pack. It's also translated into Spanish, and they're working on getting into Portuguese as well for translations for the student. And then also for the training and professional development. Just the August Institute, the coaching throughout the year, the mid-year checkpoint, those would be the cost through that. We're looking to use the mental health grant funds that we had allocated for contractual services to support payment for this curriculum. After year 1, the costs are only associated with professional development or trainings that we would want to do, since we would own the curriculum. Or they do have other curriculums that we could purchase as add-ons at that time.
Thank you, both of you. Presentation. Are there any other questions? Any questions before I dive? Yes, Agia.
So what is the current status of what's happened in the current year, last couple of years, related to this type of program? What is our status currently is in the 6th to 12th grade level?
So in all the middle schools, they have the advisory period. The Choose Love curriculum is being rolled out in all of the middle schools throughout, all of our schools. In addition to that, the school adjustment counselors have even done their own research and really looking at what is going on in their buildings and what type of lessons do they need to bring in to build on the curriculum as well too for advisory. But again, like I said, with the Choose Love, they're still doing them, but there was only a certain amount of lessons for the whole entire year, but they're still rolling them out. At the high school, there's been no advisory, so they weren't rolling it out at the high school, but they were at the middle school, and they still actively do.
So how about SEL groups at the high school? Do we have data on if any of these things are happening across the high school grades? What are they, I honestly don't know. We don't get any reports on every student is, getting a group through which grades, or is it just non-existent?
So there are groups at the high school. I don't have the list of all the groups that are at the high school, but we could definitely get that for you. I can't speak to that.
Yeah,
right
we
now.
can give
I
you
don't have
information on
that.
that.
Yeah, my question is along the lines of what is it, how are we currently embedding these type of lessons across all of our grades? That's all, I don't need the answer today per se, but several years ago, whenever Choose Love came in, we never got a presentation, I don't believe. It was sort of like, we're gonna do Choose Love, everybody's, you know, in the name, it seems like everybody's just happy and everybody's gonna choose love and all the problems are gonna go away. That's how it honestly came out to me as just looking at it. Not knowing what the details of it are, what is it gonna be implemented with fidelity, and at the same time, in my personal opinion, the behaviors have been skyrocketing. So I'm like, what is going on here? Because the behaviors are going through the roof. I'm not sure the discipline's happening at all. I got my own opinion on that. But then it's like, well, we're using Choose Love. It almost seems like very odd. So I'm certainly open to what this is, but I think if we don't acknowledge where we currently are, last several years, and if it's nowhere, just it's nowhere. Like it's just a fact of this is what it is. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
We can get you information on Choose Love in the Friday email. There is discipline going on in every single school. I think that there's all different levels of behavior happening. I don't think anybody can deny that. So we're saying we need something else because we do have to have a consistent curriculum that we are working with all students in regards to that. This is going to supplement Choose Love, what we already have in place, but that's not enough. And we need to do more work with our students with self-regulation, with working with peer resolution, all of that stuff. So, we need more.
yeah, I hear you, and I'm supportive of it. Why I brought up the discipline, it was mentioned earlier that some of the reason why we looked at it was looked at discipline data.
Absolutely.
And the like. I personally don't think that the school committee has gotten enough by school discipline data and to look at and not specifically like what child, because that's not in our purview. But I think it is in our purview to look at what is happening across the district. Now, I know for a fact that something's happening at his school, gets a certain consequence and a certain level of order and discipline and expectation. Your school might be different, my school might be different. That can't happen, in my opinion. So the best programming we buy, if we don't correct the other issues, I think we're just gonna be, treading water here. So when I asked about that and the discipline data, I do think we need to take a deep dive into what does it look like for discipline, like the conduct policies, those type of things. So I think we need to have future meetings about what does it mean, what it doesn't mean. And we need to be consistent, as the superintendent said. If we don't have consistency of use, that's gonna be a problem. So my last question is on who is going to run all of these lessons and how are we gonna implement it with fidelity across all these grades?
So the way we see it is that this will be run in an advisory in the middle school and at the high school level as well too, by teachers.
Is it daily?
Everybody has an advisory
Yeah.
group, so everybody, it's with your.
Yeah, so counselors will have an advisory, teachers will have an advisory, so they will all kind of roll out this curriculum, which is why we felt it would be prudent for us to spend a lot of time on our rollout plan and training to make sure that it is rolled out with fidelity, and also what the progress monitoring is, or like the follow through to make sure that the lessons are being implemented the same by school and everyone's on a similar timeline, things like that.
Okay.
I think I would caution you that I'm not so sure as one member that the advisory is what we're saying it is. With an effective block of time, organized, advisory can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
So one time we'll hear it's what I need, and then it can't be all things. So as we roll this out, I think you got to be honest with yourself. I was at the meeting when Mr. Demara said, and I agree with him, that running an advisory type of program for 2,300 students is almost impossible. And it's impossible this year, based on whatever. But if I was being honest, I would say it's almost impossible going forward. It's almost not worth it. It's just too many students, it's too many moving parts. So I would just caution you that just saying it's going to be done at advisory is very
Well, they're in the
risky.
middle of building an advisory period at the high school. Yeah, we're saying that, I agree, it hasn't been consistent with everything that we're doing. So we're trying to put a system in place where we utilize that time correctly. If we're going to implement this program during advisory, we need to have measures in place to make sure that it is being implemented across the district. Elementary, there's morning meeting, that's where they're doing a lot of their work, and in secondary, it's advisory. We've had the period advisory time, but we haven't utilized that time as efficiently as we need to, and this will help us to structure that time better. I'm not gonna guarantee you anything, but we know it needs to be better.
Yeah,
we need
yeah,
something.
and I agree. And what I think has to happen, and I think when you look at whatever you present to us on the data for what's been happening currently, I think we're just putting out fires a lot instead of actually proactively having these groups. So we have very qualified adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, and the roles of both. It can't just be, well, the adjustment counselor does all the heavy lifting and the guidance counselor doesn't, which I think happens in almost every school. I think it's gotta be, if everybody's a counselor, then they should be able to run these things in the classroom without other stuff. So just keep an open mind would be my suggestion, but I do think that it makes sense. But just thinking about the high school. So if everybody's in advisory, let's say there's 2,300 students in advisory, everybody's gonna get, I don't know, you said 10th grade, but I'm assuming you mean the whole school. So if it's 2,300 students for advisory for half an hour, let's say, period. If you divide that by 20 students in the class, 25 students in the class, how many people we're gonna actually get trained to run these at that time effectively with fidelity across the whole? That's basically your whole staff.
Well, that's what the plan is to have. Like when I was there, when I was the principal, I had an advisory group. I had 15 kids in my advisory group. This is a school-wide, we're gonna implement school-wide, so everybody's gonna be trained and everybody's gonna, the smaller the group, the more effective that advisory will be. So you wanna create groups between 10 and 12 students so that you can have those conversations and that it can be effective. It's a hard lift.
That's what I'm saying.
right.
So you're gonna
right.
end up having 150 people, 200 people that have to be trained in believing this
Yes.
with fidelity to use it. I'm saying that's a tall order.
I agree with you.
That's all I'm suggesting. I am supportive, so with that I yield. Thank you.
You had mentioned you were looking at a curriculum that you could take SEL and cross it over to academics. What does that look like?
So it's really looking at what is it the lesson that they're teaching, right? Can they, if they're doing a history lesson, can they incorporate like what was going on in that history event that was similar to the character trait that they're trying to teach the kids?
Mhm.
So it's like that. Really looking at, is there a book that they're reading in English? What is the character going through? What are some of the struggles? How could you incorporate what some of the lessons that they were teaching from the leadership program and incorporating using the same language, using the same idea, and just so that way you're weaving a lot of those teachings throughout the whole entire day. So it's not just living in one class or one.
So it's not hopefully living in advisory.
Right.
Correct.
It's gonna
They
be
need to apply
kind of
those skills.
planted
Right.
there, and
Right.
then it's gonna grow kind of all over
And
where.
that's why it's important that all staff are trained in
Sure.
this, so we're all using the same language.
Now, as far as the curriculum goes, is there leeway for, say, advisors to sort of maybe focus a little bit more on this or a little bit more on that based on the needs? Because I disagree slightly with Mr. Agia in that sometimes, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that discipline can't necessarily look the same everywhere we go, because we're dealing with different scholars in different situations, and what would work for one scholar may not work for another. And even though it should look similar, and I'd like to think administrators across the district are, thinking similar to each other in regards to discipline, but I think it's important that there's a little leeway and flexibility in making sure that we're serving the needs of the students that are directly in front of us, let's say in an advisory.
That's always the role and the goal, and sometimes we, like when I was at Durfee as well too, you always work with this, if you have a certain population as part of your advisory group, you're gonna make sure that your planning and
Right.
your delivery is gonna meet what the student's needs in front of you. So there's always gonna be that room for that.
Perfect. That's all I have.
I do have a couple questions. So one is how much of this is on, this curriculum focuses on relationship building?
So it's all about being a leader, right? It's all
Okay.
about being a leader and being able to resolve conflict, which is all about relationships, right? How to navigate frustrations and identify feelings and emotions. I wish I had brought, and so last time I met the superintendent, I had lesson plans that I even showed her, and they're really about like finding out who you are, right, and what you see as a leader, what you see in your community as well too. So it's not just about an individual, it's about the individual in their community, the individual in the school. So it's a lot about relationships,
Right.
which I appreciate.
So my follow-up to that is we also have Katie Brown in place, correct? So is this something that is just gonna overlap Katie Brown program? Is it the same content? Is it
So this is different than Katie Brown.
night and day?
It's very
So
specific.
that's
Brown.
dating, violence, and relationships.
Right,
This
okay.
is about being a leader
Okay.
and resolving conflict with peers and other people around you, which is when you look different than
Okay.
Katie Brown.
I just didn't know if there was a
No,
lot of it that was
no.
gonna overlap or, okay. I just wanna circle back to the timetable of training. I was coughing.
Mhm.
Sorry, I apologize. But just the timetable on training, and I know we wanna be ready to implement, right? Put it through the beginning of school. But did I hear that the last training was in August?
The first, so the administrators would all get trained during the Admin Institute, which is the first week of August. So that we're thinking like your counselors, guidance and adjustment, your vice principals, your department heads and deans and principals,
Okay.
so that the leaders of the building, before the staff comes back from the summer, have an understanding of the curriculum and the methodologies, because each lesson follows kind of a standard where there's a warm-up, then there's discussion, then there's an activity, then there's kind of like debriefing. So understands kind of like the scope and sequence. And we're hoping that some teacher type leaders who are interested in being kind of like school-based implementation supports would also be trained, so that when the staff comes back at the end of August and throughout the month of September, one of the focuses of the schools will be to train the staff, make sure that they feel comfortable, and then have a launch either at the end of September and October.
I guess that's where I was
Yeah.
confused. I'm sorry, I thought we were launching right when school
So
started.
so a lot at
Okay.
the beginning of the school, we wanna work on those lessons around advisory need to be about forming relationships, getting to know the students, so that's why it's not right at the beginning, because it needs to be about building relationships with your students first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right, okay, now I
Yeah,
understand.
and that's kind of like our draft, what we think now, and then some of the coaching over the summer will help us, would help us fine tune it, make sure like that, obviously realistic and we're hitting specific goals, and then we would have like a finalized timeline
Right.
after that.
I know we're winding down at the end of the year, but when will our teachers be aware that they have this opportunity to be, to be trained a little more in depth, and is that,
But we're hoping after this approval.
After this
Yeah,
approval,
we can
okay,
go
yeah.
and reach
Okay,
out and
all
say
right.
we're super
Okay.
excited, who
Yeah.
wants to be on board with
Okay.
us through this journey, because I'm excited for this.
I have no other questions. Mr. Agia.
Just following up on the discipline piece. So when you look at it, in my view personally, sixth grade, let's say, so you're talking 6 through 12. If students don't understand in sixth grade that all of the little things that they do are going to be addressed, such as put your hands on somebody else, hitting somebody else, whatever. That's what I'm talking about with fidelity. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's willing to stake their reputation on the fact that we're doing that type of stuff with fidelity across the district. We're not beating people up over it, it's just a fact. So in sixth grade, for instance, we have to start, if we're gonna do this, look, the program is called Violence Prevention Program. If kids aren't getting the idea that in sixth grade it's not okay to put your hands on somebody, and they get away with it, and then they get away with it, and they get away with it, the school gets out of control, then we got bigger problems. So if we're not taking care of the small things, the bigger things happen. Now they go to seventh grade, now they go to eighth, and it just keeps on escalating. So that when I say that type of stuff, we can look at the data, and I'm gonna keep on pushing to analyze the data. Because I'm telling you with as 100% certainty, and my colleagues and the rest of the committee, if we looked at all of the conduct referrals, some are not even in the computer the same effective way, so we can't hardly, you're gonna present us data that's not gonna be accurate unless we go to other means. But at the same time, it's not the same. So all I'm asking for is to really take a look at this, because I think that's what's going to ultimately change, so that a student can actually reflect on being the leader and whatever. All these things sound good, but if the kid's out of control, thinks he can treat people like crap, hit people, do these other things, they're not going to get to that point in an advisory with somebody. So I just think we need to come in a little more intensely with, that doesn't mean you're going to suspend everybody. I think people in this district don't understand that you don't have to suspend everybody every time you get a referral, but we need the data. We need to know Kevin's acting up, Kevin did this, Kevin did that, call the parents, and, so it really has to start there. So I'm not looking for you all to go back out and suspend 100,000 people, but just understand that that's where I'm coming from with it, and I think the data will bear it out if we looked at it a little more. So thank you for your presentation. I yield.
I have one more thing. I understand what he's saying, but on a daily basis, Mr. Agia, I think there's behaviors of all levels. We all know that, right? And I don't necessarily agree that they're not being addressed, but because they're happening so frequently, I think we'd have to move to policy, and each individual school has to follow the policy. If you want to start at the nitty gritty and the pushing and the shoving, and does there need to be a policy for the hands on a student, or does it have to be a fight? I think we have to. We
do have a discipline policy. I
right.
think what we're hearing is that there needs to be consistent implementation of that. But we may have to revisit the discipline policy, but there is a discipline policy in the district.
If we have to revisit it, we'll revisit it and
Put a group together like we did years ago to review it.
last time we spoke the policy, we were talking about in-school suspension, and that was, I think, a year and a half ago, and that was never really brought up again. So I'd be interested in getting some more data on consistency and data inputting and communication and all of it. So I'll leave with that. Anything? Okay, let's move forward to.
Motion.
Oh, we gotta
Motion to
vote.
refer
Motion to
favorably.
refer.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Ms. Pereira?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, discussion and vote for the ESL curriculum. Who's it, presenting? Well, Fernanda, come on up.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for you, but you do have a one-pager with titles of the resources, the schools involved, and the actual cost and some notes. So I'm here to present a request for ESL curriculum for middle school. And just to set it up for you, when I joined the district 6 years ago, the previous director had purchased Edge 2 years ago. So when I joined the district, that was the curriculum that we were working with, reviewing it and observing what besides that, one, it's not culturally and linguistically relevant, so we needed to revisit that, as well as in terms of age appropriateness, representation of our students, even physically, as well as the fact that it is really not culturally appropriate. So, and really there was very low interest from the students in terms of engagement. So it's very inconsistently used. The two coordinators for the department did work with the teachers in creating lesson plans, in PLC, so the former who is now a principal and the current coordinator as well, but it's been very inconsistent. In 2020, we extended the foundational programs for that has been historically housed at Talbot. We extended to Cuss and Morton. And so now, 2021, we had 6th grade, and then 7th grade, and next year 8th grade, and without a consistent curriculum. So, and we do know our students are transient, and so they be going from Talbot to Morton, Cuss with different curriculums. So I came to then the Assistant Superintendent Ponce and requested that we put together a curriculum committee, which was approved. And so Aga Barrett, who is the K-8 ESL coordinator, with a team from ELA department head, ESL coach, and ESL teachers, really vetted at least 3 programs and implementing them. So prior to implementing them, they used the rubric from the state, the content rubric that the state uses, and adding some components of ESL, because that is not an ESL rubric. And using that, then they had certain teachers implemented them, and then they had their feedback to the a Google form in which they decided which ones to choose. And we know we've been struggling in the district with an ESL curriculum. So, ultimately they chose time zones. What we're gonna do next year, in the past we've only had ESL 1, ESL 2. Next year, all 3 buildings are gonna have ESL 3. So for ESL 1, they chose time zones. And then for ESL 2 and 3, they show impact. And that's from same age. So that will be replacing Edge, and then have consistent materials across buildings, which is easier to monitor, as well as progress, progress monitor, kids' progress. So that's that in terms of substituting Edge with time zones and impact.
Can I ask a question? Quick?
Sure.
So the second box says 3 middle schools, Henry Lord, Doran, and RPA.
So we
Then
have the
underneath
3
it's
middle schools, Cuss, Morton, Talbot, and then we're looking at the K-8 schools as well, Henry Lord and Doran, and of course we have ESL students at RPA.
It's blank though, you
What
have the
is
3
blank?
up top, and then you
Oh.
have 3 middle schools on the second box, but it's blank.
So I think
what
you're
you're
counting
saying.
the 3 middle schools as Doran, as Talbot, Morton. It just doesn't articulate it here, so that's why it looks like as if the
Can
3
I see,
middle
do you mind
schools.
showing?
Yeah. See, I think it's showing the 3 middle schools,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking that could have meant Henry Lord, Doran.
I got you.
So you're talking Talbot, Morton, and
Gotcha.
so that when you
Correct.
write 3 middle schools, you mean all the other 3. So
All
there's
3 middle
6
Yes, just
actual
clarify,
schools.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just a little confusing.
Okay,
and
so
then
I'll just
you're gonna, I'm sure, explain
name-
why the other ones are getting extra, because it's
Well,
probably
Henry
different.
Lord and Doran don't have.
This is for mainstream. The impact is for SEI mainstream, so they do have mainstream students in 6-8. Else, we don't have foundational. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We don't have foundation in those 2 schools, but they would
They don't
know.
have program.
We don't have, right, but in talking with the principals, they are going to schedule a block for ESL 3, which is for those students in mainstream classrooms, so they would be also
If I could
receiving
just
those
recommend,
materials.
if this goes to the full committee, if you put that a little clearer, so ESL 1 is the 3 schools,
Yes.
ESL 2 will be, just so that you might just have to make another box,
Mhm.
but
I
it'll
think,
tell
yeah.
us a little clearer what.
I'll put PowerPoint together to find the 3 levels of ESL. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. It comes with free training, so we're thinking of doing the training sometime in September, once everybody has been hired. We don't want to be doing training prior to making sure all the teachers that will ultimately be using it. So we're thinking of doing the training at the beginning of September and then roll it out. We then looked as well at Frames for Fluency, which is a newcomer's kit We do have something identical for elementary. We don't have for middle school, and it's a standalone program. So for those very, very recent arrivals, but also it could be something that teachers could use to extend language with higher level students. You know, so let's say you're looking at this kind of a certain topic, and then there's cards, you know, vocabulary cards and functions and forms card charts that interrelates, you know, how to use the language function with grammar. So then, you know, we can they can use it standing alone with that. So that's a newcomer's kit for all 3 middle schools, and that's for the 3 middle schools, Talbot, Cuss, and Morton, because we don't have a foundation at Henry Law and Durham. And then we just as a supplementary material, it's an online program for for library subscriptions, and it's an account with 100 free students accounts. So one teacher with 100 free students account. So it has text lessons, it's all by themes, supported with grammar and things like that. And then finally, we are asking for a 1-year subscription to Finish Line. That's also just for the mainstream. That's a practice for the access test that happens in January. So teachers, they try both paper, hard copy, as well as online. The teachers went with online just because that's the format that the students take the test. It's access is an online test. So we decided that we would try it online for 1-year subscription, and then if it's something that we see that it's actually yielding some results, we would perhaps ask to renew the subscription. All of this is based on data, access data, where we see that we are struggling. There's been a ton of inconsistency between buildings, even within buildings implementation, not having a curriculum that is across the district. So I think kids deserve it, and that's the work. And any questions?
Any questions? Stagia?
So I know we just approved a large sum for the curriculum for Wonders?
Wonders,
For
yes.
this, and this is, I'm guessing, a supplement, it's not,
No, Wonders ESL is elementary, and this is middle school.
but I thought didn't we pay for Wonders across the whole district?
We
Just the
paid,
materials
yes,
or-
for supplemental materials for the teachers to also have their own materials before they
K
were
to 5,
sharing.
that was only K to 5. So they don't have that same thing in middle school?
In middle school, no.
So right now you either have, what you said, Edge?
Right now we have Edge,
And-
which, like I said, is really not culturally and linguistically appropriate for our kids.
So we've been implementing that for a couple of years without, using
So
it?
I came in, it had been purchased, didn't want to just make the decision to get rid of it, kind of looked at it on my own, trying to support the teachers, and then we added positions. And when we added position, we really had the coordinator sitting with the teachers at PLCs and doing all this training, and it's still really not, it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Yes,
That just concerns me that we purchased something that was inappropriate. Like, I'd like to dig back to how that even happened.
That was 8 years ago, I think, right?
Right.
6 or 8 years ago.
Correct. So, the field
When it was purchased.
field has changed, the discipline has changed, but also it was done 8 years ago. So, in the lens that was looked at, it was probably not. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
It's
it was inappropriate. I would say at the time,
That's
that
right.
was the curriculum that they thought was the best curriculum.
Correct.
8 years later, we're finding that the needs are different
Yeah.
and we're looking for something different, but, the word inappropriate is not like, I don't
That's
know.
what got me,
Yeah.
thinking, okay, if it's inappropriate, then
Yeah.
why have we been doing it? Like, if we
Because
buy something
I
that's
think it's not
inappropriate,
servicing the
and-
needs of our kids.
once in a while you're gonna hear my English, my ESL come through. I did not mean I'm inappropriate, but that's what was appropriate
It's not
at the time.
appropriate with the circumstances that we
Yeah,
have today.
the research
We
has
could do better.
changed.
The research has changed,
Absolutely.
our student
And we're not getting
population
the
has
results we need
changed,
to.
and we're not getting
Yeah.
the results.
yeah, so I'm assuming you agree with this as far as wanting us to implement it. I know we talked about at the budget meeting getting some data on certain things, and I'm not in my head remembering getting it. But if we could just like circle back and see if it's something that I missed. What I want to get is to try to see like we're spending a lot of money on these services, and what are we getting for that money? I want to try to get it in a clear. If somebody told me you spent a lot of money, you voted a whole bunch of stuff, what are you getting for that in a couple page document? I'm really not.
So on April 18th, I believe, I did submit a report that the school committee had
We
requested.
submitted was with the staffing. You asked for data on staffing
Staffing
for
and
the departments.
It was about
it was identification.
like I think we were under identifying, over identifying.
Absolutely.
So if you could just follow back up because we get so much stuff.
We'll do
What I'm looking for here with this curriculum is where are we going to be in several years? Like what are we spending all this money for, and what are the results going to be? Like we
A
can't.
projection, a 3-year projection maybe.
Well, I think it's in the way I look at it as one member is where are we currently at? We're not doing well right now.
Right.
And
So
with it,
you want academic data, access data.
So we say, okay, here's what's happened for the last. This is one of the things I think that we didn't necessarily get was like the amount of money has gone way up. Where are we now with
The
results? So we can keep on saying we do this in Florida all the time. We keep on saying spend a lot more money. We never get the results that we're looking for, and we don't have a regular system of. That's all. I just know we're not doing as well as we should be. That's why we're trying these different things. But I'm not very comfortable with explaining that. If anybody ever asks me out in the public, what is it? I can just say we're hiring a lot more staff. That's basically what I have to tell them. So
Staff and programs,
you know.
but we're not, yes.
So that's all. I'm just looking
Break it
for
all down.
whether if it's an admission that the data is just indicating that it's flat or not good, so be it. Then we got to figure out an action plan to make the data better, to make the services better. That's all. I'm not passing
Absolutely.
judgment. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
My questions were answered, so we had some. Thank you very much.
Motion to refer favorably.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call, Deb?
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Larrabee?
Yes.
Ms. Ferraro?
Yes.
On to 3.3, discussion and vote to refer sub-separate core curriculum.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having this before you tonight. Upon my entry to the district, we identified, several years ago that this was a need. We looked to really try and move this forward throughout the pandemic. We definitely hit some roadblocks in terms of timing and engagement. However, this year we had excellent engagement by our teachers and our Joint Liberty Union Management Group to preview both curriculums. Before you and I brought Deb DeFalco, who has been one of our amazing teachers over at Henry Lord for quite some time, and now is serving in an administrator's capacity, which is a huge asset to the program. But I brought Deb just to talk a little bit about her experience and why this curriculum is so needed throughout both populations.
Hi. I've been teaching with the ASD population in Fall River for 15 years. This is my first year as an administrator. We have never had a curriculum for our children. We've always made our own materials. We've used Teachers Pay Teachers. We have, there are different websites that we can get materials from for children with autism. We have used our own data systems that we've created ourselves. They don't transfer year to year when you aren't consistent. Classroom to classroom to classroom. So when kids get to 8th grade, then that teacher doesn't have any meaningful data from kindergarten all the way through. This curriculum, the Styler Fitzgerald Curriculum that we have all looked at, is amazing. It's curriculum based on state standards. It has a pre-assessment in each area of instruction. The elementary level has 11 areas of instruction with 170 possible IEP goals in a goal bank. The secondary has 11 areas of instruction with 150 possible IEP goals. What's really wonderful about that is everything we do at the intensive level is based on the kids' IEPs. When you do that pre-assessment, that gives us their current level of performance. That current level of performance drives us writing their IEPs. We're not just pulling things out of a hat trying to figure out what goal are we going to write next. That's what's happening with a lot of new teachers in particular. They don't know how to write an IEP. They don't know how to pick a goal, what's going to come next. This system, this program, does it for them. It is totally follows the standards. It sequentially builds upon the skills from the standard. It comes with the data system, it comes with progress monitoring, it comes with all that, tells them exactly when to do the next skill, when to go back. It uses discrete trial teaching, that's where I was going with that. Discrete trial teaching is exactly what we use now, which is evidence-based instruction for our children. So it is everything that we do, but it will be standardized throughout the program.
Thank you, Deb. So when we originally started this process in looking at core curriculums for our ASD and our community-based populations, we originally had thought we were going to go with one curriculum K through 12. What actually happened was through the feedback sessions, we identified that really the style of Fitzgerald was way more appropriate for our K to 8 ASD population, and that attainment was going to better meet the needs of our community-based students in K through 12. Both really do present high-quality, highly modified curriculums for our students with a significant focus on transitional skills when we're getting to the middle and high school levels. And one of the pieces we got through our feedback process when we brought in these curriculum providers, we had them do about 6 demos. Then we also recorded 2 of those sessions for teachers who weren't able to make the virtual sessions, also sent them out for feedback, and also went through a survey process to ensure that we were reading the room right and knowing what they really wanted to move forward with. When we got our survey results, this is what we came up with in looking at the order for these 2. I think one of the things that, in setting a teacher up for failure is when we don't give them the core curriculum and tools that we need, and especially when we have been in such a really turbulent year. I think we're going to have a lot of new teachers throughout our schools, and this is going to be a way really to get them on the right foot, set them up for success. And I'll say our BCBAs and cluster coordinators are very excited really to support this process to ensure that high quality instruction and curriculum is implemented in all these classrooms.
Good.
Yeah.
The training aspect, it's done, you're gonna be,
No, we're gonna put in, once we get approved, it goes to the full committee and they vote to really, move forward with the
keep
purchase.
forgetting that part, but, okay.
All of our schools are gonna have dedicated time prior to the start of school to really get familiar with the curriculum, look at developing scope and sequences so that they know how to also bring in some of their supplemental materials as well. Both programs both have supplements, but they don't have a core. So they're gonna have to kind of work those in between. Durfee's actually already started the process on working on a scope and sequence for next year. They had some old attainment products previously, so they are really already starting this work. Our cluster coordinators and BCBAs are going to be the leads on this process on developing our teachers and helping them really get familiar with the curriculum and guiding them through that process.
You mentioned the style of Fitzgerald aspect, that it's going to basically help the teachers with the IP. I assume that's going to save a lot of time for the teachers as well, correct? In an immense amount of time.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think when we have these very challenging classrooms where teachers are already, probably putting in, 8 to 10 hours a day,
And then at
right?
home.
And then going home, like trying to create curriculum materials, tracking behavior, synthesizing data. We need to be able to give them these tools to take some things off their plate so that they stay here, right? And they feel supported and they know how to move forward in their work.
I yield. Any questions? Yeah.
So I agree, we need it, I've worked here, I've known sort of the struggle. I'm assuming that other places that have high functioning programs are using something similar.
Yep. So part of the initial research process was I reached out to some of our neighboring districts who have very similar in number of populations that we do, and these, along with a few others, were made in terms of recommendations. When we went through our initial review, these were the two that we moved forward to go before our groups. And as we noted, kind of initially, we thought we were going with one curriculum, but when we got the feedback, we decided to go with the two because really, being that Starlight Fitzgerald is ABA based, it's gonna way better meet the needs K-8 of like our students over at Henry Lord, compared to attainment for the rest of the district.
Yeah, so I definitely think it is needed. The supports are there. I just worry when there's a checklist. A lot of times if there's a checklist, it's an easier, let's just do it. But they need to be individualized, and I know when we have quality individuals that are, they're gonna individualize that IEP and the services for the kids.
Certainly.
I caution that if it becomes a checklist, sometimes it can be too easy to do, rather than to dig into the data, dig into the nitty gritty, especially with the children that we're dealing with.
Yep.
So I think it's gonna help us in the end, because right now we don't have anything. So it's better than nothing, and then I guess we'll go, either year by year or whatever, implement this for a few years, and hopefully, but I definitely think the resources need to be, we're putting the people in place. Now we need this, I think to add to it. You had mentioned about the joint management group.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any things that you could send us on relative to that, any minutes or anything like of, you don't have to say now, but if you have anything
Yeah,
that
I can follow-
articulates it, because I don't know all the questions of what people, I'm sure at those meetings, there was questions from the practitioners that were, a little more pointed than what I could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have any info, minutes or whatever, I've seen some of the other joint management minutes. We don't get those on a regular basis, but then we use the result as something that we should make a decision on. So I'd like to see the background so I can dig through it and say, okay, this is what Mike said and Kevin pushed back, but Mike had a good answer, or, whatever. Just, I
Yep.
think any of that will help us as the full committee, to do it. But I definitely do think it's needed to put the resources in for this population of students. So thank you for bringing it forward. And my last thing is, I'm sure this is in the Walker report of some type of,
Yeah.
we talk about in the special ed subcommittee about the recommendations
Mm-hmm.
and checking those off. So we'll be having a meeting soon to go over the bigger picture with the folks on that committee. But I think this will check off a lot of boxes on what that report said we needed. So
Definitely.
thank you, I yield.
Okay, so
Motion to
we
approve.
have motion to refer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Next is 3.4, update on Lexia.
Oh, I thought it was next. Oh, yeah.
You can stay with us.
Sorry, Stephanie, you can sit next to me.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hello.
So we sent a one-pager that explained the program, I think on Friday, just to give you some background on a program that we're hopefully moving into our second year using here in Fall River. And so my goal today is just to give you an update as to how implementation has gone over the past year, both at the elementary level and then at the secondary level. So Lexia has been around for a very long time. I think it was developed in 1984. We were kids back then. And so the program itself is an adapted blending learning program where students take a diagnostic assessment and then they're placed in the program at the level in which they test. This program, Core 5 that I'm speaking of first, the elementary program, is for all students. And so the reason I mention that is because when we speak of the secondary program, it's different. So this is for all students and it complements our core instruction. Students work in different areas with regard to basic early literacy skills that include phonological awareness, phonics, structural analysis, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And so it's the 5 essential components of literacy that they're working in. The program itself is research and evidence-based. So as students work their way through the program, it's fairly independent to begin with. When students are flagged as having difficulty with a specific unit, teachers see that in the data that students have been flagged, and they can pull a lesson right from the program itself to administer with that child or with a group of students who have a similar profile. Even if students haven't been flagged yet for that particular lesson, but the teachers know their students well enough to know that even a preview is going to support particular students. So after the lesson, students are given a skill builder. So they're completing a worksheet type thing that asks them to now apply what they just learned in that small group. And then students go on the computer and they complete that lesson. If they do that successfully, they move on in the program. But if they don't, the cycle begins again. And so there is teacher intervention that happens within the program. It's not just left up to a computer to solve the problem. So if you look at the slide that's titled 2021-22 Lexia Core 5 usage, I should have numbered these in some way. You'll see that we have a wide range of usage that's happening in the city. And so when students are placed in the program and they diagnose where students are struggling, students are given a minute target. That minute target can be anywhere from 20 minutes a week to 90 minutes a week, depending on the level of need of the child. If students are meeting those usage targets, I want to explain these 3 categories to you. The first one is meeting usage. Those are students who have used the program for 20 weeks or more and who have met their weekly usage target at least 50% of the time. The category that's highlighted in yellow are students who have used the program for a minimum of 20 weeks but did not meet the usage target for 50% of the time. So that's the differentiator between those 2 categories. So the green is that they have met the usage target 50% or more of the time, and the yellow is that they have not. Our students who are in the not meeting usage are students who either have not used the program at all or have not met the 20-week minimum in order to move into a different category. Okay. On the next slide, the usage category by grade, this is showing you exactly that. What % of our students are using the program and falling into the 3 categories. The meeting usage is the cobalt blue. The not meeting usage is the lighter blue, and partial year, which is less than 20 weeks, are the kids that are in gray. So as you can see by this bar graph, the majority, the highest usage is in grades K to 3. Yep, and there's a reason for that. In K to 3, the usage, they want kids to be on about 60 minutes. That's the cap. But in grades 4 and 5, it can go up to 80 minutes. And so if I'm a 4th or 5th grade teacher and I'm departmentalized and I have 60 to 90 minutes with my kids, I have to find time within that very short period of time to put kids on a program for quite a substantial amount of time.
Am I not seeing the elementary as
Yeah.
it starts at 6th grade on us?
Yeah,
Steph,
Oh, I'm on
we
this.
only have power up. I thought maybe it was just me.
I was trying out so
Oh,
hard.
you
I
were
was-
trying real
I thought,
hard.
until I looked at it, I saw the blue, but then I looked at the
I have
6th grade.
all of them.
Yeah, that's odd.
Take mine.
We can fill the long, your point's well taken, the
Sorry.
grades is gonna be
Oh,
more.
that's okay.
I don't know what happened. I just printed and.
But it's run,
Remember when you were
But
like,
it's
did
run
you do
cable.
1,000 of it?
Yeah.
I think
I got the
maybe,
right one.
I wonder if
Do you want to print it out, Trey, and I'll just keep going?
I would keep going, don't let me
Okay.
interrupt you.
All
I
right,
just,
sorry.
when
I
I
can-
was saying it's K to 12, like, every grade has one of these bar graphs.
Right, so I'm focused on just Core 5, which is different than the program that's used in grade 6 to 12. Should I project? Would that be best?
we have the copies.
Okay, good. Get nervous.
Yeah, they were just mixed in, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, something funky happened with the printing.
Any others?
No, this is the same one I already.
No, we have the other one. We just didn't have
There's a
this
power
one.
up.
Yeah, I already have that.
All right, you're throwing me now.
No, we're good.
It was on it, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
We're back.
All right, good.
So
Let's
pre-K,
get back
that's
in it.
where, all right.
Yes, so
So-
pre-K, just to explain that a little bit, in the best way that I can, not being really involved in the pre-K work that Kristen's been doing. Pre-K just started rollout mid-year. Kristen had done some research around other districts that were using the program successfully, and they decided that they were going to do it with a very small population of students in pre-K, and they started later in the year. Okay. So in this graph, you can clearly see that K to 3, there are more students who are meeting their usage targets and more students that are using the program. So on the next slide, titled Progress During the 21-22 school year, there are two sets of bar graphs. The one on the left is showing the students in Fall River that are not meeting usage or fall into the partially meeting usage, which are, again, those kids that didn't reach that 50% usage target. And on the right, those are the students who are meeting usage. And so at the beginning, so the slide highlights the progress of our 1,900 students that are meeting their usage target as compared to the kids that are not meeting those usage targets. So in the beginning of the year, focusing on the meeting usage on the right-hand side, only 20% of our kids were working at or above grade level. And now our most recent data is showing that 68% are working in the program at the at or above grade level as defined by the program. And we've also had a decrease in the percentage of students that are working 2+ grade levels below. And so those are the kids that are in the dark gray. We had 44% of our students working at 2+ grade levels below at the beginning of the year. And now, according to the program, I want to stress that because I didn't define these targets. We're at 11%. And so that's pretty significant when you look at the bar graphs on the left-hand side as compared to the right-hand side with the percent of students that are working in or above grade level. And so the blue boxes. So I think what this highlights for us is that when students are using the program as intended by the minutes goal, you can see a significant difference in how they're performing with the grade level material. And so in speaking with the Lexia support group, they said that this data is pretty typical for a first year. They actually thought in some of our schools we were outperforming like what a typical district would be doing as far as usage minutes, which you can see on the slide with the arrow. And so this is from 0 to 100 as far as minutes in school. And so you can see there's a pretty wide range of the average number of minutes that a school is using the program. And so there are 3 schools that are starred. Those are our 3 highest schools meeting their usage minutes. And so in speaking with them and thinking about what we've done at the district level to make that happen, but specifically with those starred examples, they have challenges that are running in their building. So they have Lexia challenges. Spencer Borden has the Lexiosaurus that visits classrooms and kids get to read to it. They designate a certain time in their day where kids are using Lexia. It's almost like stop and drop it and use Lexia in your classroom. There's a lot of data tracking happening on the part of students. So students tracking their data, conferencing with the teacher and goal setting, and then they've built in teacher routines and expectations in those buildings that are showing that it's making a difference in those in what students are producing. And so the first step is to get those minutes in, right? Because if they're not using the program, we're not going to see the growth that we want to be happening again on that right-hand side bar graph. And then to shift to more of usage goals And so productivity. So our kids completing the units that we would expect them to be completing in a certain minute time span, 4 minutes, I think, 4 to 7 minutes. And so we've done a lot of work in schools. They've done a ton of work. On our end, we've done a ton of work, a lot of public sharing of data across schools, sharing what schools are doing in our finale every week, so that practices start to spread, and we've seen that starting to happen across the district. On the next slide, where it says all student progress in Core 5, the first start slide, this is one of the schools that had a star on the number line. And again, it's just showing that when the minutes are being met, we're seeing significant growth. And so you can see that on the next 3 slides. Those are the 3 schools that were starred. Should I move into Power Up with the secondary, or do you want to do question and answer for
I have a
Core
question.
5?
Mr. Aguirre?
So when if I was to ask, what was the expectation given at the start of the school year for all schools? Was
Yep.
there like a memo sent out or something to say the expectation is an hour a day? What backup documents can you give to say that what the expectations were?
Yeah, so schools each have their own professional development contact from the company. And so they've met with that. They have 4 meetings a month, a year? They have 4 meetings, and schools schedule those. And that person's job, so this is outside of district support, that person's job is to do impact reviews and set them up, do professional development with teachers. On our end, we have communicated consistently, both in the memo, in person, meeting with coaches. I've done a lot of work with my ELA coaches in how to support teachers in using Core 5 effectively. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
All right, ask it again.
So it's like a simplified version of what everything you said makes sense.
Yeah.
So what my frustration is, as our results are not there, is expectations, in my opinion, and fidelity.
Yeah.
I keep saying it to every single thing. We've had it at the curriculum,
Sure.
the technology thing. Like, as you're talking, I'm getting more aggravated.
I'm sorry.
No, not just because it's very clear. If anybody looks at this information and says, if you do X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
you will get positive results.
Yeah.
That's what you just told us.
Right, right,
So I'm saying to myself, well, what in the hell's going on here?
right.
Where if I'm a principal of a school, I get a chance to not do it? But you're a principal and you do?
No, yes,
That's
I
my-
understand
so,
what you're saying.
So I'm like, wait a minute here. If, like, I'm gonna ask for the data, like, individually,
Sure.
because it's just truth in advertising. And we talked about it at the technology committee of having dashboards where everybody, it's gotta be clear.
Yeah.
But we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on stuff that's not used. Now, you're saying very clearly that if you do this, it's almost like you're saying, you know, if you go buy 5 scratch tickets, you're gonna win on 6 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
Why would I not do it?
Right,
Like,
right.
So I'm not gonna ask too many questions because if I say that.
Yeah, I think I
something
can
that
answer
shouldn't,
your
but-
original question
Sure.
though about the clarity around minutes expected. The thing that's difficult about that is that the minutes expected of a child is individualized based on the diagnostic assessment. And so for me to say 60 minutes for each child, I wouldn't say it would ever hurt a child because they just keep moving forward, but you might be a child who's working at or above grade level and you only need 20 minutes. And so that's where that data dashboard really is hugely important to know. Are kids progressing in the actual program itself? And then are you seeing the results when they're outside of the program? But I do understand what you're saying, and I can definitely give you more data to show who's using it, who's not using it.
So I think it's the message. So I think that's what you're referring to, the message that everybody needs to. I think that part of the issue or the inconsistency is that people are struggling to give up that time, right? Because kids, depends on school, depends on the class that's in front of you, they see other needs taking priority over saying, okay,
Yes.
now you're gonna take that Lexia time. That's why we see that inconsistency. But after getting that data, running through a year, then we can say, listen, but we know this is research-based, we know it's evidence-based, we have evidence in our own district, and that's something that we need to prioritize. But I think that that's that decision, that pull, people feeling conflicted, okay, I'm gonna give up direct instruction time so that I can give time for students to be on the computer in the
I
program.
agree with you.
So
Yeah.
my question was, what are
He's gotta yield.
oh, sorry, Kevin.
No, just, I hear what you're saying. I think you can understand my frustration, because it would be to anybody that's watching.
Sure.
The messaging, I think, has to be a little stronger of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I'm all for teacher autonomy and do this and that, but as far as I'm concerned, like teacher autonomy, everybody can say that if a student isn't reading proficiently by grade 2, it's a predictor of problems going, okay. So then nobody gets the choice anymore to say we're gonna do anything else but this, because, so now if I'm below grade level and Stephanie is at grade level, then the teacher's letting her do something different, but I have to do that piece. That individualized, this is what we're gonna do for every kid, so that we get, by grade 3, everybody's reading at grade level.
Yeah.
Never mind the other ones that go, but that's the part that gets me, is that, and I think some of it is people try to be nice, and, you know, we're trying to work with people, and everybody, the results are not there. So if we just keep doing the same thing over and over, well, we're 20%, 30, whatever, it's gonna go up. We want 100% of the kids to get it.
Definitely.
And then when they're using it with fidelity for that amount of time and it's not going up, now it's another red flag of, whoa, wait a minute here, what else is going on? And we can do the intense. So it's really not complicated in my mind.
No, you're right.
But it certainly is frustrating to sit here and see this type of very clear 2 + 2 = 4. That's what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we not doing it? So with
I
that-
would say that during the principals meeting when we talked about scheduling in April, we said at that point that the expectation is that there was a WIN block in every single building, and that during that WIN block, Lexia is the tier 2 intervention to support students. It's not to say that a child wouldn't go on to Lexia and then also have a tier 3 intervention with a human, because we do know that a human is going to have a different impact than a program. But you're right. You're definitely right.
And sometimes if you have a 5-unit school, 4-unit school, everybody is afraid to say that we have to match kids up to their ability in some ways. But I'm not afraid to say it, because I think that's how we're going to get all the kids to move. And everybody wants to talk about, let's just deal with it. We have to get everybody reading by a certain level. And I think that's the key, is just we can no longer keep doing things as we did
I agree with you.
instructionally. The results aren't there, and we definitely need to change it. So I just think if we can get the info by school, like basically this, I would say it's something like this. One of the schools is listed on here. I think
Oh, I did. Oh, sorry.
But
I removed it.
but I think it'll just help us to see, and it's not to beat up any school, but I think we need to provide you the backup to say, no, this is what we're requiring. So if you go back down and say you have to do this, well, the school committee's saying this is a policy that we're gonna pay for this, but we're gonna use it. So
Yep,
with
I
that,
agree.
Aiel, thank you.
I think that goes across the board as well with every curriculum. If we're gonna be paying all this money and the superintendent wants a curriculum, I think teachers have to follow the curriculum. And if it's for
We've made that very clear.
Yes.
greater outcomes, and I think that's what the future holds. As far as you mentioned a couple times that each student has the individual times, okay?
Yes.
Just kind of tell me how that is implemented. Like, are the teachers timing it? Is it the computer program?
The
Is it-
computer will
okay.
time it, and so students can actually look at their own dashboard. It shows how much time they've spent on the program. It also shows how many units they've completed. So students see it, and then the teacher sees it as well. So I know, I'll mention a school, Watson has their students with a data tracking sheet, and students have to track their units. It's less about minutes because they've been using Lexia for probably 4 years. They had it with their turnaround money. So the teachers are very familiar with it. They've changed some of the expectations this year with regards to usage, student usage and teacher usage, because it really is about teachers being very aware of what students are doing on that program so that they can intervene appropriately.
Thank you for that. I yield. Mr. Pryor?
My 2 questions were, what are the barriers that are preventing this from being across? I think you kind of answered that. And then I was also going to ask what Mimi just asked. So when you wait till the end, you have a lot less to say. And I do agree with everything that Mr. Aguirre was saying, so I'm not going to go ahead and repeat on that. But when you were talking about some students requiring 20 minutes when other students require 30 minutes, are we seeing like funky data because of that? So does it look like some schools their usage is less because the students require less?
No.
No, it's all 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all set. So if a child requires 20 minutes and they meet that 20
Then
minute
it's
mark,
just a
they're
meet.
in that
It's a
category.
meet check.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, with that I yield. Thank you.
Unless-
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm not last. I thought I was last.
No, coming up next. So Wonders is K through 5?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, they're not doing
That's the
Lexia,
core
'cause
curriculum.
that's the core
Wonders is the
curriculum,
core curriculum.
and Lexia is under
Is a supplement.
supplement. Thank you, that's all.
Question.
Mr. Aguirre.
So.
Oh,
when
you're
we-
going in Power Up? I don't even want to have that conversation.
Well, I was reading this, I thought that's what you were going on,
Yeah.
so as it went in here. And have you not presented this yet?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry, you.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
You'll have plenty of questions now. So Power Up is different than Core 5 because Power Up is an intervention and it's meant only for at-risk students. So that's why I mentioned earlier Core 5 is for all kids. Power Up is for students who are at risk requiring intervention, this particular intervention. Again, it adapts instruction. They use a diagnostic. Their components that they work in are word study, grammar, and comprehension. So only 3 different zones that they work in. And again, a proven program that's been around for quite a while. So I'm presenting out on data that is fairly new to me because I had not looked at Power Up before Miss Rabbit left. And so I'm doing my best to present out what's happened here. Okay. And again, okay. So when you look at the same chart that we looked at for Core 5, the one that has the yellow box on it, you'll see that there are about 68% of our kids who had a partial year. I just want to explain what that means with regard to Power Up. Power Up is just recently getting some traction in 3 different schools in the city: Morton, Talbot, Henry Lord. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. The schools have put in some structures and systems and set some really high expectations for usage. And I have a slide where I can kind of share out what they've done, just reaching out and learning from them around what they're doing differently as compared to what they did in the beginning of the year. Also in the partial usage category is the Durfee freshman group. And the reason for that is because when I started working with Miss Vinaco a couple of months ago, we decided that we were going to assess the 9th graders so that we could set up a tight intervention for next year as it's written in their turnaround plan. And so we've assessed those students, and I've gone over and personally provided training to teachers on how to assess fluency for the 9th grade teachers. A couple of other grade levels joined in for the fun. And so right now we're set up for a win block that Durfee is putting in their schedule for next year. And so this data looks a little deceiving in ways because there are only 56 kids that are actually meeting usage. Those 56 kids likely come from the 3 middle schools or the ELL or sub-separate classrooms at Durfee. And so very, very low usage. What I would say is that if I were to hypothesize why this is the case, I would say, again, like Maria said, it's a sense of urgency around the teachers not wanting to give up the core content. They have a lot to accomplish at a very short period of time, especially in a departmentalized situation. And in Power Up, if you're a child who needs this intervention, you can have up to 120-minute goal for the year because they're trying to close very wide gaps in order to get kids up to grade level. And so where do those 120 minutes come from during the course of a middle school or high school day? And so
And there's also the one-on-one as well, or the small group
Yes.
tutorial.
Yes.
If they're not meeting their
Exactly.
expectations, there's that additional time as well,
Yes.
correct?
Yep,
Okay.
and so, and then again, who does that?
Mhm.
And so at Durfee, for example, they're gonna have interventionists joining their team. And so that interventionist could be a person who supports that Lexia small group instruction. And so I just wanted to explain that this does look a little funky, and that's the reason why. I can't speak to what supports have gone into besides the power-up supports that come from Lexia. I can't speak to what district supports have been given to the secondary schools around usage. I just don't know the answer to that at this point. You can see on the next slide the usage category by grade, that there are some students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade who are using the program. And again, if you dig a little bit deeper, those students are, the majority of those students come from Henry, Lord, Morton, and Talbot. So on the next slide, the all students progress and power up. This is looking at all students, meaning all 3 categories, and how they've progressed over the course of the year. And on the next slide, you see that same bar graph, but for students, the 56 students who are meeting usage. And so you can see the significant difference. And again, it goes back to, if we get the students on and they meet their required minutes, we're going to see the progress that that is expected of them. So I think this shows exactly what Mr. Aguirre was saying. If we know this is the case, then why is it not happening for all students that need this particular intervention? On the following slide, in the last slide actually, there are just some highlights that have come out of the data. And I wanted to share out some of the things that we've learned and that we can spread as we move into next year when I am supporting secondary ELA. And so I did reach out to Henry, Lord, Talbot, and Morton to find out what was going on over there and why the uptick. And so some of the things that I heard are things like they're not expecting just the ELA teacher to take part in this. Sometimes it's happening in the tech time. Sometimes it's happening in the WIN block. Sometimes it's happening in social studies and ELA, that humanities world. There's a level of accountability on the part of the teachers. So administrators and support staff are looking at lesson plans and walking through classrooms to support teachers in any way that they can. There are morning announcements on this Lexia leaderboard, like who is meeting their minutes and who is meeting their minutes. They're highlighting those students, and again, like extra professional development on the part of both the Lexia team and the school-based team to help teachers better understand the why of Lexia, which I was speaking to Dr. Curley earlier. I feel like that's what's missing in secondary, if I were guessing. Teachers, and even in 4th and 5th grade, honestly, teachers don't understand the why and the research behind the program in order to say this is worth the time for our kiddos. Right now, Lexia is doing, I've been in contact with Lexia about doing an impact study. How are our kids doing, our kids that are meeting their minutes, how are they doing on other assessments? And are we seeing that transfer over to something that's less personalized?
Any questions?
No, I mean, just a comment, we all know that you learn to read and then read to learn. So I understand that teachers may feel the need to address time to other subject matters that are also very important, but the reality is if they use the curriculum the way they should be using the curriculum, that's going to help us in the long run with comprehension in all subject areas. So yeah, that's something I agree with what Mr. Aguirre was saying earlier. I'm sure, not speaking for everybody here, but I think we all agree. There needs to be a focus on making sure everybody's on the same page, because clearly the numbers are showing it's benefiting, our students. I don't have any questions though, I yield.
This last slide was for the K-12, both presentations,
Yes.
so this was like a combined one.
Yeah.
When you rate 91% of meeting usage students, it's not just these 56 kids, it's the
Correct.
other ones. And then basically, it's highlighting exactly what you were saying.
Yes.
Because I see K-2 skills, like working on some K-2 skill, foundational, some K-2, is that K-2 grades? Or is that like a different, what does that mean?
So you could be a high school student who falls into what they're calling a K-2 zone, which is a little tricky. So when we assess some of our students, I had done some fluency assessments with one in the school to show as a video for the teachers that I was training. And so I was assessing students and recording it. And I happened to record a little boy that I don't know, a 9th grade student. So he was one of my target students. In addition to that, he took the Lexia Power Up. He was disfluent, but not disfluent to the point that I was like, holy moly. And his comprehension was mediocre, but he was able to tell me general understanding of the passage that he read to me. When he took the Lexia placement test, he fell into the K-2 zone for phonemic awareness. And so there are some, like, when I looked at it, I thought, how could this boy be in this particular category? And so, you know, I questioned some of that data around the phonemic awareness with the big kids. And so, yeah.
But it's K-2 doesn't necessarily mean it's only children in K-2.
Right,
You're
exactly.
talking about the skills basis. So it could be
Yes,
all,
yes.
you know, kids. So it's obviously the same, I'd have a lot of the same thoughts. We need to just do
I absolutely
we
agree.
need to focus on instruction a little bit more in this district, in my opinion. And, you know, I have my own thoughts on how we can sort of get there with a leadership model that's going to focus on this. But you asked, like, or somebody said, well, what do you do? Like, in my mind, if I had a child that was in need of reading and I'm in whatever grade it is, I would expect the school district to say, you're going into a class, intervention class, whatever it's called. I don't really care what the parent says. I don't care what anybody says. You need this skill. You are going into that class. And I think we're so afraid to just do that.
Well, I think that's the purpose of the win block, right? And if we're saying everyone will have a win block and what I need is Lexia to support me, then that's what I should be doing. And that's what the expectation is as we move forward, where everyone consistently has this block of time. Call it what you want, win, skills, it doesn't matter. But the expectation is if I'm a kid that's flagged as needing this in the middle school, I better be on it because it's working.
Right, so if we have a win block where I can go play volleyball,
Yeah,
or I can go to this,
it's
we need to make
academic
that
only.
decision to
Yes,
say,
yeah.
no, like, I think sometimes we get into this, oh, we can't say no
Sure.
to somebody.
Yeah.
Or we can't say, no, this is mandated, but we're gonna be stuck with you're all gonna be stuck with the results, because we're gonna come on you like,
Sure.
what are you doing? Like, I think people need to just be told, this is what we, have. The win block we also talked about was gonna be the earlier presentation, that's where we're gonna do this other stuff. Like, advisory win blocks, this and that, like, we can't use that time 6 different ways.
Right, so is the win block, is that synonymous at Durfee? Win block and advisory?
No, I mean, I think that it's divided up into different days. and-
Yeah, I think it might be that wind block doesn't run every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think some days would be advisory, some days would
If
be.
you ask me the priority from this school committee member, this needs to be the priority. So the win block, this, like, even that violence prevention thing sounded great. This would trump that, in my opinion. So I just think and I said it right out, I think it's gonna be a hard thing to implement at Durfee High School with 2,300 students. And this can't just be, well, if we can pull the win block over for 2,300 students, like, I'm just thinking of a high school schedule, and I work in a high school.
Yeah.
If I had this data on my children, I'd be saying, no, this is your intervention class 3 times a week. This is what you're doing because we need you to get to grade level and this and that. So you need to schedule it and use our resources to put a person in that room to teach that class. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I do appreciate the data is just going to keep on, like, asking more questions. But I think it's important for us to see we're going to do it, and it has to be with fidelity across the board. So with that, I yield. Thank you for the presentation.
Motion to refer.
Motion to refer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I doing something?
Oh, that's it, it was just an update.
I would say we should bring this to the full committee. Myself.
Well, the contract's going to the committee anyway for year 2, so.
But I do think that this is a valuable, maybe, like, now that we've got some questions, condense it, maybe have the data broken down accordingly, but maybe like condense it so that the full committee, that's just my suggestion, that we as school committee, and I've been there for a long time, haven't pushed for these kind of things, so I appreciate Superintendent bringing this forward. These conversations are good conversations, but the full committee should get a couple pager on this is what it is, and then the chair's gonna report out on what happened, but if I wasn't at the meeting and don't happen to watch it, this is important, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice, Steph, thanks.
All right, so we're not gonna motion to refer, we're just gonna get the.
I think she's gonna put it on.
Just gonna put, you're gonna put it on the agenda, okay. Next up is 3.05, discussion, social studies curriculum update.
Okay, update on social studies. So this past spring, we started looking at materials for the elementary grades in social studies, grades 3 to 5. Essentially, social studies at the elementary level there has been very little over the past 15 years. It's not just a Fall River that was like this. Many districts across the state basically focused on ELA and math over the past 15 years, and social studies got short shrift. So we're looking now to purchase or to implement curriculum that will basically improve literacy and improve social studies content. So this past spring, we asked teachers and ELA coaches, we had approximately 25 volunteers, to review 2 sets of curricular materials and give us their opinion. We used the rubric from the Massachusetts Social Studies textbook review that was shared with us by Desi. And basically, they've looked at 2 different sets, and their opinions, they basically liked both of them, and there was things they didn't like with them as well. So what we're going to do for next year, we're meeting about it, is to ask teachers to pilot some units from each of these curricular resources, and to see which one we'll eventually choose. So we will be piloting in grades 3, 4, and 5. One of the curricular units is History Alive. It's popular throughout the state in certain districts. Another one for grades 3, 4, and 5 is an open social studies curriculum. It was developed by people at Boston University, and it's a free curriculum, and it's used by Boston Public Schools at the moment, and they like it. So they're the 2 main curriculums for grades 4 and 5, History Alive and Open Social Studies. At grade 3, there's a popular textbook that's used by many districts throughout the state, and a lot of our teachers have expressed that they like it also, and that's Massachusetts, Our Home. We had that back in the 2000s.
So,
What grade was that?
Grade 3.
Grade 3.
History.
Yeah, grade 3 is local history. Grade 4 is North American geography, and grade 5 is US history. So for middle school, the focus has been on the new civics course, which is in grade 8. And on Friday, as you know, we had a project. Students from all the middle schools presented their projects at Government Center. It was a lot of fun. This was our first year that all the middle schools created projects to submit to Generation Citizen. The morning went very well. The projects that were selected ended up going up to Boston yesterday, and it was a statewide event in Boston at the Kennedy Institute. It was a great morning. It was very well organized. Students from all over the state were there. It was a great opportunity. There were some middle school students, there was high school students, and they presented, and then they listened to speakers as well. And Generation Citizen then awarded prizes to those projects that they thought merited winning. One of our teachers received an award He received an award as the Changemaker teacher for the state. He's a new teacher at Henry Lord. Yep, Jared Hatch, and it was quite an honor for him to be selected, so great job. We are also in the process of reviewing textbooks for grade 8. There is no textbook. They were given, when we started this course 4 years ago, we purchased We the People. They're a group out of Boston. They have like a curricular resource. It's not enough for teachers. Last year we had a committee take a look at the different textbooks that were available out there, and the one they liked the most was out of print, and it's by Pearson Learning. So a lot of these textbook companies have basically been caught off guard with the rush to purchase books over the past couple of years. So they said that they will have a textbook ready for us in the fall to review. So hopefully by springtime, we will know what textbooks we want to purchase for grade 8, and we can move forward for the 23-24 school year. For next year also, we're going to be renewing our contract with Generation Citizen. At this point, it's really not a contract, it's just, it is a contract, but it's very little money. It's about $2,000. Every year that we've worked with them, the cost has gone down because our needs for support have also decreased. Generation Citizen is the Action Civics Project organization. They're at this point, I think, pretty much across the country. They started out at Brown University. We basically were one of the first communities or districts in the state to get on board with them. This is our 4th year with Generation Citizen. The first 2 years it was Morton and Talbot that were involved. We expanded it, then COVID got in the way. Last year it was through Zoom, and this year was the first year that all 5 8th grade schools, or schools with 8th grade classes, participated in the program. Their goal, of course, as I mentioned, is for us to become sustainable. They offer PD, they offer curricular resources. They've been excellent with outreach, communication. They really have been a great organization. And students love the project. They love doing the project. It's a 10-week project that we do in the spring. And then for high school, this past year, 9th graders were introduced to pre-AP classes, coursework, getting them ready to take the AP exam. The pre-AP curriculum is basically around skills, whereas the actual AP course itself is around content. There's been a lot of interest, or a lot of students have taken the pre-AP course, and next year then we'll go into the AP classes. So Durfee is requesting that they purchase AP Human Geography books and AP US History books to cope with the extra demand for these courses. So that's about it.
Thank you. I have a question. Well, comment, couple of questions. What I would like to see, I know it was a lot of writing, I would like to have that, like a document stating which grades are doing what
Okay.
what they're using for the curriculum, what classes are doing it, what schools, so we can see it.
Okay.
I couldn't catch up, like between History Alive, Open School Studies, 3rd grade Mass at Home, but then you said, okay, this US history.
Okay.
And so just basically a nice spreadsheet giving us those details. I'll yield for now. So.
You mentioned that the civics course, the 8th grade students, they don't currently have a textbook, and that's something that's going to be worked on, hopefully
Yes.
navigated this year for
Yeah.
the following year. So my question is, what are they using now, and is this mimicked throughout our 8th grade classes, or is it, I'm an 8th grade teacher, I'm going to use this material, Kevin's an 8th grade teacher in a different school, he's going to use that material?
Well, they were all given copies of We the People, which is a supplemental. It's not really a textbook. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. They're an organization that's been around a while. So they have that as a resource. iCivics has also done a lot of work, and a lot of our teachers use iCivics. iCivics is an online program. It's free. It is aligned to the Massachusetts framework. The person who runs the Massachusetts end of iCivics, it's a national organization, is David Buchanan. He was the head of literacy for MCAS development for DESE, and now he's working there. So they produce really good resources. So teachers have access to that.
So basically, teachers have access to a few different
Yeah,
things, and then
yeah.
choosing what they're.
But it would be nice for them to have an actual textbook with a teacher edition and, workbooks or whatever, and really good, like, different types of primary resources that you'll get in a textbook.
Correct, yeah, sure, I agree.
And consistency.
And
And consistency, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, with that I yield, thank you.
So I think that's, Ms. Wagner.
Just a question on that, 8th grade doesn't only have civics though, right, don't they?
Nope, that's it.
That's the whole, so they've morphed the other 6 and 7,
So 6
all the
and
topics
7.
were got moved a couple years ago with the realignment?
Yeah, the scope and sequence. So grade 6 is world geography and ancient history 1. Then grade 7 is world geography and ancient history 2. Our focus is mainly on ancient history. And then on 8th grade is just civics. But there is like an extensive framework of learning standards for civics. And the Action Civics by Generation Citizen is the last 10 weeks of the school year, basically. I mean, they get a lot of grounding in the framework of this country, the institutions, foundations, Supreme Court cases, and then they go into the Action Civics project. That's just a small part of the whole year.
Can you, I don't want to see the whole curriculum because that's probably too extensive, but if we can give a top level of what does the scope and sequence look like, I'm just curious to see because it's probably more than civics. When you hear civics, it's it's probably more extensive, but if you could just send that to us, I'm just curious. But I do support all the AP stuff makes a lot of sense, and all I would say is if the money for the textbooks next year, maybe we should purchase that in the spring, so we may have them ready.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, if they come up with a textbook in November,
Yeah.
like present it now, like don't wait until
Yeah. In order.
August, you know what I mean? Because if, so I do appreciate and I agree with Ms. Larrabee on the 1-pager, 2-pager, whatever it is to summarize.
Yeah, sorry, I wrote that
Sort
up
of.
at the Kennedy Institute yesterday morning on my laptop.
It's okay.
No problem. But I think it's more than just this as a whole for social studies. I've said this in the other meetings too. I think we need to make all of the departments as robust as we can, knowing that some take more priority, but the more that we present, like this is our framework of what we expect for social studies, it's gonna let people know we're taking it a little more serious than just like a push aside, so.
Yeah, just an FYI, the framework is new, well, it's relatively new, it came out in 2018. And the Fordham Institute out of DC, is think tank, reviews all the frameworks and what kids are learning across the country, and Massachusetts was one of 3 or 4, I believe, states that got A's for their new civics curriculum. They said it's an excellent curriculum.
Good. Thank you very much. I yield.
On to new business. Any new business? I have one in new business, which I meant to ask in the ESL presentation. Can we just get a update on the dual language program?
I will include that in Friday's.
Yeah, just like to know,
Where we
any
are.
obstacles, any successes, how the teachers felt, stuff like that. But anything else, we're gonna
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
do you wanna take this water with you?
No, I have.